Good morning, grandkids. This is a work in progress, and this is chapters 16 and 17 of The Listener, a book I'm basing on my series, The Listener. I kind of enjoyed myself last night in the bar at Windhelm, and I actually dreamed after I hit the bed of Nazir. That is a total first for me. But, well, this is another day, another long trip ahead of me, and another kill. Once more, I took a trip by carriage and was dropped off at Dawnstar. This small town's spread down the lower slope of a snowy mountain, with its lower street nestled along the curve of a bay that tucked itself in from the North Sea. Most days were filled with snow flurries and blizzards, more than sunshine, but you could always smell the salt sea breezes and the fishy smell of the bay, and hear the swishing of the waves as they crawled up into the sand and then retreated. There were traders' boats at docks and ships anchored farther out from shore. Of course, there was the ever-present seagulls wheeling and diving for fish. The driver let me out near the upper outskirts of town. This happened to be one of those reasonably clear days with a weak, milky, pale sun and an icy blue winter sky. But never mind all that. I had a job to do. I hurried down the cobble road into town. Before anything else, I wanted to just walk around, checking out the layout where things were. There was a high street with a sharp little curve down to the lower street, which curved around the bay. I walked on down the first. At this end of the street was the quicksilver mine, owned by a man named Legelf, with various houses and other buildings stretched out in the other direction, following the edge of the water around the bay. I walked back and around the sharp little curve and started down the high street. There was the inn, other buildings and houses, and near the end of that street was the iron mine. Here, the owner's name was Mathilde. I had found my target, unaware that she only had a day to live. As always, I was curious as to why a contract had been put out on those I killed. I very seldom found out. But it was, quote, none of my business, as I was always told. But sometimes I nosed around and tried to find out anyway. I stopped to talk to a couple of workers who didn't have anything useful to say, but one directed me to the boss lady, the lady who was near the entrance to the mine. I casually walked up to her and asked how business was doing with two different mines in town. She had a sharp-edged, severe look and a severe, no-nonsense attitude. Almost the first words out of her mouth were complaints against her husband, who owned the other mine. From what I understood, they were in the middle of a divorce, and each wanted to buy the other's mine, neither one of them giving an inch. By then, she was more or less telling me to get lost. I walked back up High Street to the Wind Peak Inn and went in and took a seat at the bar. I ordered a drink and some food and paid for a room. I started asking about any gossip. Mostly they wanted to talk about nightmares everyone was having. Finally, I just went ahead and asked, "What about the two mines in town? Is the competition between the two good for business?" I know, sounds like a stupid thing to be doing when I was here to eliminate one of them, but I was really curious to find out who might have put out the contract on Batilde, although by now I had my suspicions. Besides, the killing would be done in the dead of the night, and then I'd be long gone, like a shadow. If anyone wondered about the stranger in town, I might be all the way to another town by then. But when I asked, that's when things got interesting. One said, "I don't know if it's good for the town or not, but it's made for some good entertainment." "How's that?" I asked. He said, "The two mine owners purely don't like each other. All they do is snap and bite and snarl at each other like two angry alley cats." About then, a man came in, sat down, and ordered a drink. One of the old bearded codgers around the corner of the bar chuckled and said, "There's who you should ask about the mines. He owns the Quicksilver mine." They all started laughing and talking and sort of ribbing the mine owner. He got a little hot, started getting wound up about what must have been an old topic to the town folk. He finally got up and left, throwing some money on the bar as he stormed out. "What was that all about?" I asked. "That's legal. He wants to buy out his wife's iron mine, and she won't sell. Of course, she wants to buy him out, and he won't sell," the old codger laughed. "So they're at each other's throats day and night," said another man. "Makes for fine entertainment." The bartender chipped in with, "I'm not surprised they haven't killed each other." Bingo. Very interesting gossip. Now I do believe I know who is paying for this contract. I decided to take a walk and sauntered down to the low street and stopped near the Quicksilver mine. I thought about talking to Legal, but decided that might be too bold a move. But I wanted him to see me, know that I was there. I caught his eyes squinting, checking me out, especially my armor, sizing me up. Finally he spoke. "What kind of work do you do?" I was pretty sure that he had figured that out already, so I just said, "You might say that I eliminate problems for people." "Good enough," he said, and walked away. I went back to the inn, bought a mead, and took it to my room. Before getting a few hours' sleep, I decided to bring this journal up to date once more. Once Batilde is found dead, I wonder if the town will speculate about the stranger who came to town, or if they'll speculate about the husband. No one was about in the inn when I left my room and slipped out into the night. It was a quiet, mysterious night, shrouded with mist. The stars were nowhere in sight, but a small sliver of moon glow escaped from under a dark cloud which was trying, almost stealthily, to hide the moon from sight. I went sneaking down to Batilde's house, staying as much as possible among the rocks and trees on the back side of the town. At the corner of her house, I stood in the shadows, checking out the guards. One had just gone by and was down at one of the docks talking with a boat captain. I leaped up on her porch, jimmied the door lock, and was inside quick. I stood there with my back to the door and waited. Nothing stirred. Batilde was asleep on her bed with her back to me. I could hear soft snores. I quietly unsheathed my dagger and moved up to the edge of the bed. Just like with the old woman at the orphanage, I made 2 quick moves at once. Clamped a hand over her mouth, pulling her head up and back, at the same time slashing her throat. I took her key, then looted everything of value while walking around drinking one of her bottles of wine. The time went so quickly that maybe the guard on the street had made a full circuit and was headed away from me again. I cracked open the door and peeped out. And yes, my guess was right, and he was down the street. I slipped out into the dark, around the corner of her house, and up into the hills. Now it was time to get back to the guild. When I had first approached Dawnstar, there was a Khajiit camp set up with some trading going on. I was hoping they would still be around. I scrambled back down out of the hills and saw that they were just breaking camp and getting ready to move on. I went down into the camp, found the leader, and asked how far they were going. He said they were going to set up next in Whiterun. I asked if I could tag along, that I'd be happy to hunt for the camp's food and to help guard the caravan from bandits. That was great with him, and it would put me halfway back to the Brotherhood. It was going to be a long trek, and I was not one for spending much time with that many people, so I spent most of my time ranging far out from the caravan. I would make kills as animals came along, take the meat back to the caravan, and then sell them the pelts. There weren't too many bandits about, not enough to get the Khajiits involved. But one day I did get wounded by a sword, and the ladies took care of it and bandaged me up. I even rode in one of the wagons for a day. The last day I traveled with them, we were coming down out of some hills and saw a group of revelers ahead, singing and waving their mugs around. They called out to us to join them and share some mead. The caravan leader laughed and was all for it, even offered to share some skooma. It looked like they wanted to hang around for a while. It wasn't that many more miles into the city, so I said my goodbyes. I left them happily singing and drinking as they went about setting up their tents and making camp. I caught my same friendly carriage driver out of Whiterun to Falkreath, then hiked up the road to the Brotherhood Sanctuary. I walked into what would have been a surprising sight if I had not already had my suspicions after what Astrid had told me about the Night Mother and her keeper. There stood the members chatting with Cicero, the crazy man I had met on the road one day with his dead mother in a box. The old man, Festus, was welcoming him and the Night Mother, saying it was a welcome return to tradition. Aha. So, sounds like he wants the old tradition back, which Astrid got rid of. He could be another ally, I thought. I wondered how Astrid was going to be taking this. She was standing there, not quite looking at the Joker. I imagined that her nose might be out of joint, and I almost laughed at her sour expression. She wasn't feeling too happy right now. She did welcome him, but very forcefully made it clear that she was in charge. I wondered if I'd wind up killing her someday to get her out of my way. She then turned to me, and after a snarky remark about the keeper, gave me a contract. I was to go to the Hag's Cure, an apothecary shop in Markarth. There I was to speak with the apprentice Miri. She had performed the sacrament and wanted her ex-lover killed. I was to do whatever she wanted, and since this was my first contract for Astrid, I could keep the spoils. I was to represent the guild well in that hold. Before I could leave, Cicero saw me and exclaimed that he recognized me, and we stood talking about the help I had been to him on the road. He said I had pleased the Night Mother and that she wouldn't forget it. I wondered if he really was crazy. He talked about her as if she were alive. He went on to tell me that her previous crypt had been destroyed and that this sanctuary would be her new home. He is called the Keeper for a good reason. His whole life is dedicated to taking care of her, even anointing her to keep her preserved. Yuck, not something I'd ever want to do. We continued discussing about the listener. He said there hadn't been one in many long years, that the Night Mother has never named him, and certainly not Astrid, as the listener. The way he said that sounds like he thinks Astrid is a snake in the grass. I'll stay on his good side, as he could also be an ally. He went on to tell me that the Night Mother is the unholy matron, the undying spirit of a great woman who birthed the children of Sithis and killed them in his honor. Cicero giggles throughout the telling of this like the crazy man that he is. I think if I was her keeper, I'd be crazy too. I found Nazir downstairs having lunch, picked up my payment for the 3 contracts I had finished, while listening to his marvelous voice. I also found out he has an amusing, dry sense of humor. I then asked his advice about the contract Astrid had given me. His reply was just to keep your wits about you, and for Sithis' sake, stay alive. I was glad he was concerned about my life and hoped it was just a little bit personal. I had to smile at my ridiculous thoughts. I tried to talk to Arnbjorn before I left to see what he thought about Cicero, but he hates everyone and everything except Astrid, and he keeps calling me beef roast. Where is he getting that? I think he and I might someday come to blows just over that. I turned away and walked out. So that's the end of those 2 chapters, and I will get back with you in the next video about my book. So for now, goodbye, grandkids.